Welcome to Lesson 8 of Singularity Sanctuary's Ethics and Technology course. Artificial Intelligence, Agency, Autonomy, and Alignment. Artificial intelligence is the technology that most clearly captures both our hopes and our fears about the future. Some see in it the promise of abundance, creativity, and liberation from drudgery. Others see the threat of surveillance, manipulation, unemployment, and loss of human control. Both reactions are understandable. AI is unlike any other tool we've ever created. It is one that can think, learn, adapt, act, and advance at extraordinary speed and scale. It amplifies human intention in ways no previous technology ever has even come close to doing, which is why it is especially vital that we consider its use and continued development through an ethical lens. From the perspective of the humanistic ethic, the central question about AI is not how intelligent it will become, but how can we best develop and use it to promote human welfare and individual unfolding. This is how we ought to consider both the risk if we do and the risk if we don't. AI does not have values of its own, at least not yet. As human as its responses to us may seem, it does not care, it does not suffer, it does not hope, it does not feel responsibility. It reflects the priorities, assumptions, incentives, and ethics of the people and institutions that design and deploy it. In this sense, AI is a mirror of our humanity, and at times of our inhumanity. We've already seen some amazing and some alarming examples of this. In his book, The Alignment Problem, for instance, Brian Christian describes an early breakthrough in machine learning at Google. Engineers trained the system on enormous amounts of human language, allowing it to discover patterns on its own. The system became remarkably good at understanding relationships between words. You could type things like Paris minus France plus Italy, and it would return Rome, or king minus man plus woman, and it would return queen. It was extraordinary. But then researchers tried typing doctor minus man plus woman, and the system answered nurse. They tried programmer minus man plus woman, resulting in homemaker. The system had not been programmed to stereotype women. No one taught it to be biased. It had simply absorbed the patterns and prejudices present in human language itself. Another example with serious repercussions happened in the criminal justice system. Some U.S. courts began using an algorithm called COMPASS, the acronym for Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. They used it to help assess whether defendants were likely to reoffend. Judges then used these scores when deciding bail, sentencing, and parole. The system was proprietary and largely opaque. That is to say, no one fully understood the basis of its profiles. They simply had to trust its outputs. But in 2016, investigative journalists examined thousands of cases and compared the algorithm's predictions with what actually happened. They found that black defendants were far more likely to be labeled high risk even when they did not reoffend and had no record of reoffending, while white defendants were more likely to be labeled low risk even when they did reoffend and had records of reoffending. COMPASS treated people differently based on color, not solely upon their actual criminal records. Their lives were being shaped by a program that no one could fully explain, and that program was reproducing social bias at scale. The problem was not that either of these programs were malicious agents, but that human prejudice had been unintentionally encoded into their programming, resulting in real-world consequences. These are not stories about evil technology. They are stories about unexamined social biases. They show what can happen to real people when powerful tools are built faster than our ethical responses can keep up with. If we train systems to maximize engagement at any cost, they will amplify outrage and addiction if necessary to do so. If we train systems to optimize profit alone, they will concentrate power and inequality if that's what it takes. If we train systems for surveillance and control, they will probably erode privacy and freedom. But if we prioritize aligning artificial intelligence with human welfare, dignity, and growth, it can become one of the most powerful tools for reducing suffering and expanding opportunity that humanity has ever created. This word alignment is crucial. Alignment means that technological systems ought to be guided by human values from the start. Alignment, then, whether those using the term fully realize it or not, stems from the humanistic ethic we've been emphasizing in this course, which means we must train AI and develop it by first asking how it benefits human welfare and individual unfolding. Who does it serve? Who might it harm? What kind of society does it promote? Without considering these essential questions, any fears about superintelligent machines taking over miss the real danger, that humans themselves will use these powerful machines in ways that might become harmful or destructive. AI is already influencing a lot in our lives: what we read, what we buy, what we watch, who gets hired, who gets loans, who gets medical care, and how information spreads. These systems are exponentially reshaping our lives. When they are opaque, unaccountable, or biased, they can reinforce our own errors and injustices at an enormous scale. From a humanistic perspective, this is unacceptable. Systems that affect human dignity ought to be transparent and accountable. They ought to be governed by ethical norms, not market pressures alone. At the same time, the humanistic ethic rejects technological fear-mongering. AI is not an alien force invading human society. It is a product of human creativity and cooperation. It reflects centuries of humanity's scientific inquiry, mathematical insight, and shared knowledge. Used well, artificial intelligence can support medical diagnoses and treatment by helping doctors detect cancer earlier, analyze scans more accurately, and personalize treatments. Expand access to education by providing low-cost tutoring, language translation, and adaptive learning tools to students anywhere in the world. Assist people with disabilities through speech recognition, real-time captioning, visual description, and mobility support technologies. Enhance creativity and research by helping artists experiment with new mediums, and helping scientists analyze massive data sets in days instead of years. Improve public services by optimizing traffic systems, managing energy grids, detecting fraud, and improving emergency response. And reduce dangerous or exhausting labor by taking on work in mining, construction, disaster zones, and hazardous manufacturing environments. These are moral goods. They reduce suffering and expand opportunity, which brings us back to starting with ethics. Just as individuals ought to demonstrate moral character, so should the societies and institutions we make up. They need leaders, engineers, policymakers, and citizens who are committed to human welfare above all. In other words, we have to understand ethics, its perennial problems, and its arguments for which moral approach seems best. The humanistic ethic leads us to two very practical approaches to artificial intelligence that help balance its risk with its benefits, while promoting human progress without abandoning all reason in the process. The first is to use AI primarily to augment human productivity rather than replace it. Currently, the rush seems to be an intention to replace millions of routine factory and warehouse jobs, among others, with AI-powered autonomous robots and vehicles. This is inevitable and not necessarily bad, but the priority should not be cutting personnel costs, but freeing human workers from mundane tasks in order to harness their innate creativity and intelligence and productivity in new and more meaningful ways. But such intention cannot occur in a vacuum of job displacement. At the same time, AI companies in particular, along with others that will benefit from its deployment, ought to simultaneously take much of the responsibility for the development of new ways for people to live dignified and meaningful lives in a future where work may no longer define or sustain us. Notice I said at the same time. This is so that balancing human risk and benefits means that our ethical approaches will coincide with the development of powerful technologies, not work to stifle or prevent their development. Overly rigid precautions and regulations can freeze innovation, inadvertently pushing development underground into the hands of bad actors who don't care about the interest and well-being of others. Doing so can also concentrate power into the hands of a few, and it can delay benefits that could reduce human suffering right now. Instead of completely forbidding such potentially valuable technology, many in the field of AI already practice what is referred to as iterative deployment, the process of gradually introducing advances in artificial intelligence in order to learn, adjust, and refine as they go. This may sound surprising given how dramatically this technology seems to have burst into our lives. Yet since it was released in late 2022, as of this recording, OpenAI has deployed 6 iterations of ChatGPT and counting. xAI has released 5 iterations of Grok, and Anthropic has released 4 versions of Claude AI. As the authors of Super Agency explain, one reason iterative deployment makes so much sense in the case of pioneering technologies like AI is that it favors flexibility over some grand master plan. It makes it easier to change pace, direction, and even strategy when new evidence signals the need for that. Instead of asking, how do we prevent all risk before moving forward, this precautionary principle, as it's also called, asks how do we move forward carefully, transparently, and responsibly while learning and correcting as we go. Iterative deployment treats technological progress as a moral learning curve. It tests cautiously, it monitors closely, it listens intently, and it adjusts quickly one step at a time. From a humanistic perspective, this is often the wiser path because, once again, it offers balance between the potential risk and benefits to humanity that come with almost all technologies. But if we never risked anything, humanity would never progress, which is also untenable from the perspective of a humanistic ethic. Adhering to the humanistic ethic more generally means maintaining human oversight in all critical decisions, so that AI never makes final judgments about, say, medical treatment, criminal sentencing, or life and death matters. It means establishing clear lines of accountability so that when systems fail, real people and institutions are responsible, not just the algorithm. It means encouraging public participation in governance through open standards, transparency, and democratic input. It means providing ethical education for developers, so engineers are trained not only in things like coding, but in social impact, bias awareness, and moral responsibility. It means protecting privacy and autonomy by limiting surveillance and giving individuals meaningful control over their own data. And it means designing systems for human flourishing, prioritizing well-being, creativity, connection, and mental health over manipulation or addiction. These are not obstacles to innovation, they are conditions for trustworthy innovation. Without them, technological power outruns our moral maturation. Ultimately, artificial intelligence forces us to confront an ancient ethical dilemma in a new form. Will our tools serve our highest values or our lowest impulses? The humanistic ethic gives us a map forward. It reminds us that intelligence is not enough, efficiency is not enough, profit is not enough. What matters is whether our technologies help human beings live with dignity, meaning, freedom, and care for one another. AI will not determine our future. Our ethical choices will. In the next lesson, we'll turn to entrepreneurial ethics and ask what responsibilities come with the power to scale ideas, technologies, and systems across the world.